Maryland founded as a Catholic refuge. 1632. Imagine an England where being Catholic was not only unpopular but dangerous, a place where faith could cost you titles, possessions, even your life. Against this fraught backdrop, Maryland was founded in 1632 as a bold experiment, a colony where Catholics could worship freely and coexist peacefully with Protestants. This is the story of Maryland's unique origins, its vision, and its enduring legacy. The vision of George Calvert, first Lord Baltimore. George Calvert, known as the first Baron Baltimore, was a deeply devout Catholic who served as Secretary of State to King James I. However, his faith eventually made him politically vulnerable in predominantly Protestant England. Seeking a safe haven for English Catholics and a profitable colonial venture, Calvert first pursued the idea of a colony in the cold Newfoundland region, named Avalon, but his ambitions soon turned southward. Calvert's death in April 1632 came just before the grant of a royal charter for a new territory in the mid-Atlantic's warmer climes. This grant was awarded to his eldest son, Cecil Calvert, the second Baron Baltimore, who inherited not only the title but his father's vision. The colony was named Maryland, likely in honor of Queen Henrietta Maria, the Catholic wife of King Charles I, though some Catholic scholars posit the name honored the Virgin Mary. The Maryland Charter and Practical Politics. On June 20, 1632, King Charles I officially granted the Maryland Charter to Cecil Calvert. This proprietary colony was a private possession, literally the family estate of the Calverts, empowering them to govern the land and its settlers with considerable autonomy under the Crown. This grant also served England's geopolitical goals by reinforcing English claims against Dutch encroachments around the Delaware and Hudson rivers and bolstering English presence along the Chesapeake Bay, a rich area favored for agriculture and trade. The first journey and settlement in late 1633. Under Cecil Calvert's authority, his younger brother Leonard Calvert led the first expedition to Maryland. Over 200 settlers embarked from Cowes on the Isle of Wight, aboard two vessels, the Ark and the Dove. After a stop in Barbados, they arrived in Maryland on March 25, 1634, at St. Clement's Island, near the Potomac River's northern shore. The date is still commemorated annually as Maryland Day. At St. Clement's, Jesuit Father Andrew White celebrated the first Catholic Mass ever held in the English colonies, a historic moment symbolizing Maryland's Catholic sanctuary intent. The settlers then moved to establish St. Mary's City, the colony's first and long-standing capital, named to honor both the Virgin Mary and the Catholic roots of the settlement. Religious toleration and the Act concerning religion. From its start, Maryland's governing Calverts sought to avoid the strife and persecution that had plagued Catholics in England. They recruited colonists regardless of faith, welcoming Protestant settlers alongside Catholics to grow the colony's population and economy. In 1649, Maryland passed the Act concerning religion, also known as the Maryland Toleration Act, one of the earliest laws mandating religious tolerance. It protected all Christians, especially Catholics, from persecution, a pioneering step toward religious freedom in America. However, tolerance had limits, notably excluding non-Christians and atheists, showing the delicate balance the colony struck between freedom and control. Economy, land, and labor in early Maryland. Unlike earlier colonization attempts focused on gold or quick profits, Maryland's early economy was built on agriculture, especially the cultivation of tobacco, which became the colony's cash crop. This crop tied Maryland into the transatlantic tobacco trade, vital for colonial prosperity. To encourage settlement and labor, Maryland employed the headright system, granting land, usually 50 acres, to settlers for themselves and every person they brought as settlers or indentured servants. This system attracted many English families but also led to increasing demand for labor, eventually spurring the introduction of African slavery in Maryland's plantations. After 1639, relations with Native Americans. The Native American tribes in Maryland, including the Yokomiko, initially welcomed and aided the English settlers. They traded furs and resources, showed colonists how to cultivate essential crops, and even provided shelter in their log houses. However, as with many colonies, relations eventually soured due to land encroachment and cultural conflicts. Maryland's leadership initially pursued peace and diplomacy, but had to navigate shifting alliances and occasional violence, reflecting the precarious position of indigenous peoples amid expanding European settlement. Political challenges and conflict. Maryland's governance was dominated by the Calvert family for much of its early colonial history. Leonard Calvert, the first governor, governed with authority but faced challenges from competing interests, including Virginia-based William Claiborne, who disputed Maryland's claim to Kent Island. Religious tensions between Catholic proprietors and a growing Protestant majority also complicated governance. The Protestant Revolution of 1689 briefly seized control, leading to Maryland becoming a royal colony until the Calverts regained proprietorship in the early 18th century. Maryland's legacy of religious freedom, the foundation of Maryland as a refuge for Catholics, and its commitment, however imperfect, to religious toleration, marked a pioneering moment in colonial America. It foreshadowed wider ideas of religious liberty that would later be enshrined in the United States Constitution. St. Mary's City's early embrace of coexistence among differing Christian denominations demonstrated that, even in adversity, accommodation was possible. The Maryland Toleration Act set a legal precedent for the recognition of religious diversity and the limits of freedom, balancing individual conscience with social order. Conclusion: Maryland's place in American history. Maryland's origins reflect the intersection of faith, politics, and commerce in the early colonial era. Founded in 1632 as a Catholic refuge under the leadership of the Calvert family, Maryland grew into a prosperous colony committed to the ideal of religious tolerance and economic opportunity. From Leonard Calvert's courageous governance to the historic landing on St. Clement's Island, Maryland's founding challenges and triumphs illustrate a unique chapter in the American colonial story, where persecution gave way to promise and religious conviction shaped a society destined to influence the future of religious freedom in America. This comprehensive blog explores the vision, founding, religious policies, economic foundations, and enduring legacy of Maryland as a Catholic refuge in early America.